Itachi Shinden Part 6. Countless crows assaulted his enemy. The large man cried out, surrounded by a crowd of beaks so dense, there was no opening for him to flee. Itachi's enemy had been neatly caught by his shadow clone technique. Now! Itachi shouted from the trees above, far from the flock of crows. Looking down, he could see the enemy shrieking, and Tenma on the ground below him, too stunned to even get to his feet. Yuki and Shinko were also there, surrounding them. "Here we go, Shinko. All right." The pair sprang toward the enemy, and the crows flew up into the air and disappeared into the woods. "Ah!" The man cried out in agony, and collapsed. Carefully watching over the particulars of the situation, Itachi quietly leapt down from his branch. "Nice call there, Itachi," Yuki said, clapping. Tenma stared, annoyed, as he pulled himself up off the ground. Shinko didn't pay the boys any attention, but instead went to check on the dead enemy. It had been discovered that one of the vegetable peddlers who came and went from Konohagakure was a spy for Uegakure. Itachi's team too had been given the order to dispose of him, and so they had left the village to find him. Normally, it was the Umbu's job to eliminate intelligence agents from enemy nations. But the Umbu were all currently busy with a certain urgent mission, not one member remained in the village. The attempted kidnapping of Hyuga Hinata, the head ninja of the village of Kyumigakure, who had had an antagonistic relationship with Konohagakure for many years, journeyed to the village to sign a peace treaty. The mood in the village was celebratory, but then Hinata, the daughter of the Hyuga clan chief, was very nearly kidnapped. The kidnapper was killed, and the girl returned home unscathed, but since the kidnapper was actually the head ninja of Kyumigakure, the situation developed into a standoff between the villages. Their head ninja murdered, Kyumigakure insisted on compensation, in the form of the body of the Hyuga family head. Konoha pretended that the man's twin brother was the actual family head and placated Kyumigakure with that, somehow managing to avert a descent into war. Given the urgency of the situation, the Umbu were all sent out, and the village's key ninja were all on standby in case fighting did break out, so they couldn't make any careless moves. That said, they couldn't exactly let an IWA spy slip out from under their noses. And here, Team 2 was selected. In truth, rather than Team 2, it was Itachi who had been chosen. His practical abilities were already on par with the average Chunin, even though he was only 7. Thus, he had drawn the attention of the leaders of Konoha. The job itself had gone smoothly enough. The spy was caught so easily by the trap Itachi set outside the village that it was almost comical. The man made his own position blindingly clear. With Itachi in the lead, Team 2 spread out around the man and closed in on him. But Tenma was in too much of a hurry. The mission would have been nice and easy if they had simply taken the time to track the man, but, eager for recognition, Tenma had charged out ahead of the others. And just as a cornered mouse will lash out at the cat, the desperate spy launched an attack at Tenma's throat. Itachi swept in to save him in the nick of time. The spy's kunai dug into Itachi. But he had used a substitution technique, transforming into an enormous murder of crows, and then counterattacked. The rest of it went as noted already. "Not Costumin himself none," Shinko muttered, crouching down in front of the spy's corpse. Having mainly studied healing ninja arts at school, she was assigned to the team for just such times as this. Assessing whether an enemy was in disguise, possessing knowledge about poisons, and treating the injuries of their comrades, a squad needed to have someone versed in the healing arts. "He isn't? Well, that's good," Yuki remarked calmly. "You." Shinko stood up, put both hands on her hips, and looked at Tenma. "Don't suppose you got a word or two to say to Itachi?" "Huh." Raising a single eyebrow with force, Tenma looked off in a different direction. "Weren't for Itachi's quick thinking, you'd be dead right about now. You can't at least think I'm telling you, I got no idea what you're talking about. Seriously, you." "What kinda?" Shinko took an angry step toward him. Itachi stepped in between them. "Enough." He stretched out his right hand in front of Shinko. It's basically cause of you talking that attitude that this boy runs off all wild, yeah?" Shinko asked. "You might be a little one, but you're a right genin too. Got to give him the what for sometimes." "It's fine, Shinko." A smile played on Itachi's face, and she let out a sigh. "Don't let him do what all he wants, yeah?" Shinko said, and turned away. Yuki watched over them nervously. "Even if you hadn't helped me out, I would not have got taken down." Bloodlust. Itachi coolly followed it to its source. Tenma. His fist, coming toward him. With the minimal amount of movement, Itachi grabbed it. I really can't stand that attitude of yours, like you just see through everything and anything, Tenma muttered, his clenched teeth squeaking. Will you get over it if I apologize? I'm telling you, that kind of answer drives me nuts. Releasing his fist, this time Tenma sent a kick flying. Itachi avoided this simply by throwing back his upper body. With the force of his leg cutting vainly through the air, the older boy spun around twice. And then, with his back to Itachi, he dropped down to sit on the ground. Not like my physical techniques reach you or anything, Tenma muttered, back still turned. You can do anything. You got no idea how I feel. Itachi didn't know what to say. I'm sorry about what happened at school. And that thing before. Tenma hung his head, motionless. Thanks. Itachi stared silently at the other boy's rounded back. Well, go in. At his father's urging, Itachi placed a hand on the closed sliding doors. On the other side of the spotless paper, the room was silent. And yet the intense aura there, in that room separated from him by a single sliding door, came though with such intensity that it practically prickled his skin. An aura of unrest. Itachi's heart sank. Itachi, his father pressed him. With no other choice, he opened the sliding door. The hall, 15 or so tatami mats large, was filled to capacity. But because there was no light in the room, the figures were all silhouetted. Sorry to make you wait. Gesturing Itachi into the room, his father crossed the threshold, and then reached back to close the door. The darkness grew even more concentrated. With no one shadow leading, several of the human forms stood up, and together lit the candles in the four corners of the room. A faint light illuminated the interior. Sit down there, and listen. His father pointed to a seat at the very back of the room, the only open space on the floor jammed with people. Itachi pushed through them to make his way to the designated position, and sat down quietly. His father watched his son get settled in, before stepping through the assembled group to sit at the front of the room, facing everyone. We'll now begin our regular meeting, Yashiro announced from beside his father. Lord Fugaku's son Itachi will also be attending the meetings from now on. My son is 7, Fugaku said. Although he has the genin status required to take part in these meetings, he is still very much a novice. Due to my admittedly selfish desire to have him learn about the clan status from a young age, he has been allowed to take part. I appreciate your understanding. He bowed his head. In response, the clan members sitting before him bowed their heads simultaneously. Now then, to pick up where we left off last time, I'd like to discuss the issue of the submission of a written opinion to the Hokage, with regard to the segregation of the clan's compound. Yashiro had barely finished speaking before the people at the meeting all started talking at once. Some insisted on a show of force for Konoha, others said they should keep a calm eye on things and proceed amicably, and still others looked at the faces of those around them, unsure which opinion to agree with. Even though their purposes were all different, it seemed that everyone there wanted to actively participate in the conversation. Abruptly, Itachi felt someone's eyes on him and immediately turned his own eyes in that direction. Shisui. He met Shisui's eyes. The older boy was silent, and seemed unaccustomed to the boisterous atmosphere of the place. Then, his good friend smiled at him, and Itachi felt an indescribable sadness. The clan's evil feelings hung heavy here. Itachi was also not accustomed to it. I feel the same as you. The next Itachi put his heart into this will come on, Saturday, May 8th.